Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. It is time for my April wrap up, starting with what I bought in the month of April. I didn't buy anything, but I did realize that in the first quarter when I was doing my hauls at the beginning, I wasn't including like other bookish spending, and so I do just want to say that I do currently still pay for a book of the month credit even when I don't get a book, and I did recently reinstate my Libro FM, so I'm going to accrue a few credits there as well, but I haven't actually like acquired those books. I just have some credits sitting around. So to get into my stats, this was my best reading month yet. I actually did hit in early May a 50-day streak of reading for an hour a day. So I read for at least an hour every single day in April. I have since broken that streak, but that's okay. So here is my graph I love to throw in. This is comparing my last year's average to this month to this year's average in each of these categories. But in April, I read a total of 12 books, totaling 3,008 pages. I read for a total of 46 hours, making my average reading speed per hour 65.4. And I actually read no audiobooks in the month of April, so I have 0 audiobook hours. It just happened that way. None of my holds or anything came in, so no listening time. I read 8 physical books, 3 ebooks, and 1 ARC. 6 of these books I owned, 3 I got from the library, 2 I acquired, and 1 again was an ARC. My genre breakdown, I truly was reading a lot of random things here because this is probably the most like diverse in terms of genre that I've had all year. I had 3 romances, 2 adventure, 2 mysteries, and then 1 each of mythology, historical, sci-fi, nonfiction, and contemporary. I read 9 adult books and only 3 children's books. You're gonna see I did not read as many Magic Tree House books in this month that I should have, so May is going to be kind of stacked with those. And then in terms of when these books were published, 4 of them were published before 2010, 3 from 2010 to 2019, 2 from 2020 to 2022, and 3 of them were actually 2023 releases. Overall, a pretty good month in terms of ratings as well. I had no DNFs, no 1 stars, but I had 3 2 stars, 4 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and I did wrangle 1 5 star, making my average star rating for the month a 3.5. So from least favorite to most favorite, as always, starting with the Magic Tree House read along, our nonfiction pick. For April, we read My Life with the Chimpanzees by Jane Goodall. I did give this 2 stars. Overall, this is a children's nonfiction, and it was also written, I don't remember now off the top of my head, like in the 80s. So it's pretty outdated, and I overall just felt like this wasn't written for me, and it felt not for me. Yeah, it landed at the bottom here at 2 stars. Then a shocking one, because I had very high hopes for this book, and I read this with a fairly large group of people in a buddy read. I have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I thought this plot was so scattered, and the like old people vibe didn't do it for me here, and that kind of crushed me because that's what I was looking forward to the most, was the fact that this was like a group of older people kind of doing this thing. But I have a book later in the month that also involves like older characters that did work for me, so sadly this one didn't work, but at least I don't have another ongoing series on my list now. Then I have the 2 Magic Tree House books that I did read this month. At 2 stars, I have Thanksgiving on Thursday, and then the bottom part of my 3 stars, I have High Tide in Hawaii. And continuing into my 3 stars, I read 1984 by George Orwell this month for a book club I am attending in person. There is a vlog coming that includes this book, but I think this is coming first. Overall, I gave this 3 stars. I felt pretty meh about it, which is okay because generally I don't think I will enjoy classics, and it was fun to get to like discuss something with a group, but overall, do I think this is like the best thing ever? No. Next in my 3 stars, I have Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. You'll see I did also read the first book this month, but that I enjoyed a little bit more. But for Unfortunately Yours, these characters are introduced in the first book in like kind of a negative way together, like their relationship is presented negatively in the first book. And so it was hard to even convince me that like this should be happening. It is a marriage, like a hate to love marriage of convenience. I also thought that Tessa Bailey banked a lot on the fact of you knowing the setting from the first book and didn't really like go for it in this one. So overall, I just thought the first book, which was much stronger, this book, even presenting itself, is more tropes and things that I'm less likely to like, so that's fair. And then my last 3-star, but this is one that I would consider myself like, I liked this book a lot, and that is The Retreat by Sarah Pierce. This is the second book to the Sanatorium, and so this is like a murder mystery series. So far, both of the books have been set at like vacation, isolated setting situations, and our main character, who is like a detective, is very aloof. She's a little bit unreliable, and you're like, why are we trusting her to be the person to do these things again? But overall, I'm having a really fun time with the series. The next book hasn't been announced yet, so I'm hoping it is soon. I am hoping it continues. I would like to continue. And so jumping into my 4 stars, the first one I have is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I had a really fun time with this one, and this one I enjoyed the couple much more. And this is more of like a second chance romance situation, if you can even really consider that. They weren't like together in the past, but there was potential crushes. But the premise of this is that our main male character comes back home, and so this is set in like a vineyard town, and like I said, this book sets up the setting and the vibe of that much better than that second book did. And so he's coming back to like try to write a novel. He's a teacher, and our main female character is a landscaper, but she's also trying to like save one of the like wine shops in town because there's a new competitor. And so she has had a crush on the main male character since like high school, and so now that he's back, she starts writing him like secret admirer letters. But then also his mom has hired her to do some landscaping on the property that he's staying on, so they are like interacting with each other in person, and then he starts receiving these letters, obviously not knowing that they are from her. And it was a fun time. This gave me like the Tessa Bailey spice that I always want, so I would recommend this one. It has been getting mixed reviews, but I definitely think this first book at least was a strong standout and a fun thing to read for 2023 romances. Then I have A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. This is like a multi-generational story following Palestinian women and just kind of telling the story of the expectations of them in like a family structure, and each of these generations wanting to kind of break out of that and not being able to, and you're kind of rooting for the more recent timeline, or the youngest girl in this story, that she's going to be able to break the cycle, and that's what the story is about. I really ended up enjoying this one. I thought it was very well written. I can see, if you have read many stories that are similar to this, that this could feel like just the same, but I personally haven't, so I had a really good time reading this one. And yeah, then I have Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which this was very fun for me to even get to read. If you didn't see on my Jokes on Me episode, this was something that was hiding down in my basement for my store, so I didn't technically own this, even though it existed in my house. Now I own it because I'm definitely going to be keeping it. So it was a fun one to get to like throw in to read this month. But the premise of this story is essentially, at the beginning of the story, our couple has just gotten married, and he dies like shortly after their marriage in an accident. And so we are following the timeline of our main female character grieving that sudden loss, and then also getting flashbacks to like when they met and were falling in love. It was a very abrupt relationship. It was like they got married after like 6 months of knowing each other, and a lot of people didn't even know they were seeing each other, let alone that they got married. So overall, it is a story about grief, but also there were so many moments that like made me smile, not only in the timeline of like flashing back and getting to see them fall in love, but also just Elsie, the main female character through her grief and her interactions with people afterwards. I just really enjoyed it. And now my last two books probably will end up being two of my most shocking high ratings of the year. So that's really exciting. I love to be surprised by a book, but still in that high 4-star range. I have The Shadow of Perseus by Claire Haywood. I read this for the Shelf This book club in the month of April, which is a book club I host with rotating hosts who pick the book. So this was chosen by Adriana from Carbon Bonded Books, and mythology is not in my comfort zone, so I was kind of anticipating this being a little bit out of my grasp and not fully understanding the story, but that's not what happened at all. I felt, especially by this writing style, instantly gripped, instantly intrigued. And I followed along fairly fast and read the book fairly fast, which I think also lent to my enjoyment. I think if I would have been reading this slower and removing myself from the story, it might not have worked because the plot might have been lost on me. It is not a very long book, so I definitely do recommend picking this up and reading it quickly, but it is the story of Perseus. And then my final book of April. I had not had a 5-star in like over 2 months. I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna have a 5-star again. But my last book of the month pulled through for me. And I'm finally going to share why I read this book at all right now. And so if you don't know, I play along in the comments of Ruby from Ruby Red, her Tic Tac TBR game she plays every month, and she had gotten the prompt of Connor pick, which Connor is her partner. And so when she got that, I was like, can I swap this for Chris pick? And then I was like, wait, will Connor pick a book for me? And she said that they would, and so Connor chose from my TBR, so they did have access to things that I wanted to read and owned, but they chose for me to read The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradall, which is like a super random thing for me to even own, but I did. And I actually picked this book up because last summer we were on a trip and I went into an indie bookstore and just asked that bookseller, like, is there anything you would recommend? And that gal had recommended this to me, so I bought it full price. I think it was expensive. Yeah, this says I spent $17 on it. And so again, this was one that I was just like, I'm not sure that I'm gonna like this. It's out of my comfort zone for sure. And obviously I ended up loving it. In this book, we are following, again, kind of like a multi-generational story, but mostly two sisters, of which they have been estranged. And so we're following one sister just right away initially, as she is already like an older woman, and she has become well known for baking these pies, and she's like a baker and she's just trying to get by, and her husband becomes sick, and like she's really just, you know, scraping teeth to get by and just making her little pies, and it's like the cutest thing ever. And then we are learning about her sister. We start actually with that sister at a younger age as she discovers beer for the first time. And so we're basically learning that there has been a decision made in this family to give all of the inheritance to one sister. The sister who has the fascination with beer gets everything, basically because her father believes that she is going to use everything to build this business, but she promises that once her business makes money, that she will help her sister. They have since become estranged, and eventually we get the story of them both as older women and how this brewing situation can maybe bring their whole family together. Honestly, this was just a really heartwarming story about family and about like following your dreams and, you know, what you need for happiness and who you have at the end of the day, at the end of your life. And so yeah, this one really did work for me and I'm happy I read it. I believe this author just had a new book released too, and so I'm basically from this area, which is also what made this really fun. Like all the places they're talking about I knew, and I've been seeing that the author is doing like quite a few events around, especially at breweries. So maybe I will be able to catch him and hear him speak at some point. But that's all. That's what I did in April, what I liked, what I didn't like. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.